So we were just reflecting on our sessions this week and some themes that popped up. And one of those themes was the difference between male and female communication. Right. And that's broad, but it includes male and female brain differences, male and female preferences, the way we process things. And so we just wanted to reflect about some of that with you.
Yeah. I think so many of our conflicts are the result of these differences. And if we forget that we actually do have differences, that biological differences, of course, and just not differences in cognitive abilities, but in the way that we communicate,
right,
and our wants and the way we see things.
Yes.
And this is biological, not only preference.
So there was actually a study done by UC Irvine recently, and it reflected exactly what you just said, that while there aren't substantive differences in our intelligence, our general intelligence, the way that intelligence is manifested in the brain is very apparent. The difference between gray matter and white matter. So for instance, women have 10 times the amount of white matter as men, and men have 6.5 times more gray matter than women.
So this 3-pound thing inside of our heads, this brain, men have a lot more gray matter than women, and women have a lot more white matter.
Right.
So what's the difference? Like,
so
why does this matter?
Gray matter has to do with those localized tasks. So specific subject areas and processing centers. So when you're focusing on math, or you're focusing on how to fix something, it's all very localized. So we like to call that the waffle brain.
Right.
So everything has its own square.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Men have these boxes that we go to and that we think in, and it's difficult to just jump subjects.
Right.
Right. And if you've been married, right? Women have these spaghetti brains where, they're expressing a frustration or concern to you, and then, they're telling you about, like, why didn't you wash the dishes in the sink? And all of a sudden, like, she's talking about, like, you forgot to get gas yesterday for me. Or, you're just jumping.
Because they're all attached.
Everything's attached.
And that's due to white matter.
Right.
So white matter, whereas gray matter is those localized processing centers, white matter has to do with connecting all of those processing centers. So it's the connectivity, the neural connections, rather than the actual neurons themselves.
Right. And you could see this in a man's behaviors when, well, I don't know about you, but I focus very well.
Very well.
And I'll be reading something or listening to something, and she'll say something, and it doesn't compute. Like, I kind of hear her, but it just doesn't compute that she actually said something. She's like, "Did you hear me?" I'm like, "No, I didn't hear you. I was doing something. You saw me doing something." And that's because I'm in my waffle brain. I'm really not hearing you.
Yeah.
Maybe I heard you, but I'm not listening, I guess.
Well, and while we can't technically multitask, women can switch from task to task very smoothly.
And this is due to the white matter that you're talking about.
It's due to the white matter. It's also due to our ability to move from lobe to lobe, from one side of the brain to the other. We have this bundle of nerve cells in the middle of the two lobes called the corpus callosum, and we both have it. But men, when a male is in the womb, about month 3 in gestation, men receive what's called an androgen bath. And so that's a hormone, and it literally splits the brain in two. And so your split between the two lobes is so much thicker than the split between the two lobes in a female brain. And so the women are able to go through that corpus callosum. It's kind of that executive function between the two lobes that allows us to switch from side to side.
Right, and the right brain, this is why it's important. The right brain has to do with creativity and thinking outside the box and those creative centers, where the left brain is very logical, linear thinking. So like math, logic.
Yes. And so men can function in both sides, but he stays in that side for quite a bit, and nothing's going on the other side. So, I could be expressing something that I really need, or I'm emotional about something that's really hurting me, and I'll be expressing that to him. He might be thinking about how to fix that. And so he's, all analyzing it and coming up with a solution. But I'm over here empathizing. And actually, the study at University of Pennsylvania showed that women were switching from lobe to lobe very quickly. Men were very alert, but only on one side. So he was moving from front to back in that one lobe, coming up with a solution.
Yes.
Whereas women were going from side to side, going emotional, but then logical, but then emotional, then logical.
Yeah. So, okay, so this is the theory, right? We're in the theory.
Yeah.
And now let's bring it down to the practical.
Okay.
This is really where it comes down to practical. So go ahead and give us the practical of how this plays out in our conversations. So the woman is expressing her need for something, or her angst about life, or her frustration about something, right?
The man not doing the dishes.
Right. And so, what happens in that situation?
And so she's making those connections from, like you said, you didn't get gas in the car. I don't think I accused you of that, did I?
Not recently.
Okay. So let's say I did. Maybe I connect the dishes, which I did accuse you of recently. Say I connect the dishes not being done to the not getting gas in the car, because those both have to do with not following through. Whereas you're only focused on what's going on in the here and now. And
how does that connect?
And so I'm kind of making a list in my mind because they're all attached.
Right.
It's kind of like connect the dots. I've connected all the dots.
And I'm like, wait, you're bringing all these other things in, and we're talking about this.
And in your mind, they're irrelevant.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's how it can play out. And I'm sure you guys have scenarios in your own marriage where it plays out. And so that's an example from ours.
Absolutely. With all this theorizing, we have to remember our differences.
Yeah.
I think this is a very important thing. And I constantly have to remind myself that there are differences.
Me too. Yeah, for sure.
So, how many women out there have been explaining something, or, like we were saying, expressing your angst, or, something is hurting your feelings or whatever. And you're giving what's going on. And the man, as soon as he hears a little bit of the situation, he just starts giving solutions. Like, oh, well, why don't you do this? Well, just stop calling her. Well, okay, well, quit that, And
say no.
Right. Yeah. My favorite one, just tell him, say no. And the woman feels like she's not being heard.
Yeah.
And her immediate reaction, and I've got this before, is you're not listening.
Yeah.
And you look at her like, I am listening. That's why I'm giving you all these awesome solutions. So what's happening here is the man is operating in only that left side of his brain, and putting on his Mr. Fix-It hat and going to town trying to fix her issues.
Yep.
So why would a man do that?
Well, a man does have the need to feel valued. And this is part of his spiritual makeup. We see this in Scripture. Ephesians 5, the woman is told to respect her husband, and the man is told to love his wife, cherish her. And respecting your husband is helping him to feel, recognizing his achievements. Right. And so, anyway, when he is giving all these solutions, it's his way of showing love. Like, hey, I got this figured out. I'm intelligent. I'm smart.
Yeah, because competency,
yes,
is a huge deal for men, right? They don't want to feel that they're not enough. They want to feel like they can do this, and they're powerful. And
and not to say that it's not for women, because I think that's important for women too. But I think it impacts a man so much more if his competency is threatened in the slightest, especially by his wife, the person whom he wants to please the most.
So, like you said, you want to please her. So when you're expressing your problems, and then I immediately jump into, well, I'm going to fix it, right? That's me trying to give you my love, right? This is trying to show you, oh, I care about what you're saying, so I'm going to help you fix these problems. But is that really what you want?
Well, women thrive on relationship, connection. And so when a woman is reaching out to express, she's looking for that connection, that relationship. She's looking for an oxytocin boost,
Right.
which happens when he provides empathetic listening. So if he takes his fix-it cap off and just says, man, like, I can't imagine that, or that must be really hard for you. I can't imagine what you're going through, or man, that stinks, babe. Automatically, she feels connected to him.
Right.
And so that's what she's looking for when she's reaching out.
Right. And it's actually in scientific studies, it's been shown that through that relational connection, if a woman's able to express with words, express what she's feeling, it actually lowers her cortisol levels.
Yeah.
Which is her stress levels, right? So
It's a stress hormone.
right.
Yeah.
And so if you can remember your difference, right? And when she starts telling you problems, men, instead of putting on your fix-it hat, like I'm going to fix all these things, listen to her. Give her the time to express her needs. And notice it's about empathizing with her feelings, how she feels. So that must be very difficult.
Right.
And don't be sarcastic with it.
And you might have a solution to offer.
But not then.
First, provide empathy. And then when you're ready to give your solution, ask if she's ready. You could say that, hey, I have some ideas to share with you. Are you ready for them? And if she says, yeah, share them with me, then she's going to welcome that so much more readily than if you just dump these solutions on her without her really wanting them at that moment.
Right. Okay.
So on the flip side of advice giving is the woman's tendency to want to improve her man,
Right.
to help him. And that kind of comes across as nagging,
Yes.
but just trying to give him hints to help him out.
Right. Like
Guilty.
like, guys like, stuff will take care of its own. She'll do her thing. And a lot of times, right? Like, I'll just leave you alone. And it seems like the woman is always, or you, or the woman, I've seen this happen before, is always like asking the guy, well, can you do this? Can you do this?
Yeah.
Can you do this? Okay, so let's do some real life examples.
Okay.
So, we've been super busy lately, right? And totally in my waffle brain, where I'm completely focused, still thinking about my task. I run into the bedroom, I get dressed, I put my clothes in a neat pile.
In a big pile that's overflowing.
It is not a big pile. Big is relative. I put my clothes in a pile, and I just, go out. Now, I should have kept it clean. I should have. But, busy on a lot of other things, making videos.
So without keeping that in mind, our male-female differences and how busy we've been and his waffle brain tendency, I went in there with my spaghetti brain today when we were getting dressed, and I kind of just blurted it out. Can you please pick up your stuff? We're trying to teach Adeline not to do this. And I mean, that was the most belittling way you could do that, right? I mean, I could have chosen many other ways to do that.
Right.
So,
and because of the way, I think, I'm like, well, didn't you notice like I've kept the other part of the house clean.
Right.
I vacuumed, I swept,
right. And so I could have recognized those
the
things.
kitchen. And what I did is I said, are you serious? Like, what's the use of trying to do everything else? I'm just, you're going to point out the one flaw. But that's because of the woman's way of thinking.
Yeah.
Or you see everything. And I'm just focused on, you asked me to keep the kitchen clean, so it's clean.
And so, of course, when he starts recognizing those things, I go, and didn't I say that earlier today, that I was so thankful that you kept the dishes in the dishwasher? And I start listing the things I recognized well, and still he's focused on, but you just belittled me.
Right. And really, that's what it feels like, right?
Yeah.
Or it's it's pointing out my incompetency.
Yeah.
Which is really, you know, hurtful because it's really showing, it's a disrespect, right?
Exactly.
And so I come back and I'm, of course, going to be defensive about it. And that time I don't think I was too bad.
So let's rewind. What are some ways we could have handled that differently that would have been helpful to the relationship, both to you and to me? So how would you have liked me to handle it differently?
Well, it would have been best to say something along the lines of, you know, baby, I appreciate the fact that you're so busy and then you're really working really hard to keep everything, you know, like, you know, financially good and you've been keeping the kitchen clean. But I noticed that your pile is growing.
Sure. Yeah.
And so can you maybe be a little bit more mindful about that?
Yeah.
That would have been easier for me to accept.
Yeah.
Right?
Now, the word but sometimes can throw someone off. So maybe an and. It doesn't seem to throw you off much, but it can throw some people off.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that would have been good to kind of preface. My mom always taught me, sandwich things in. You know, give a sweet piece of bread first, and then give your meat, and then another sweet piece of bread. So sandwiching that in would have been helpful.
Right.
Yeah.
So just to summarize these two hints, and this really helped me at the very beginning of our relationship to realize
helped me
my
too.
part of it.
Yeah.
Which is when she's expressing her needs, be there to listen and to hug her and not immediately give advice. Yeah. There's always a time and a place to give advice, but realize when to do it. It's not always the best time. Right when she's expressing, allow her to express her feelings, and then maybe you find a better time to look at solutions.
And then when, you know, he is going about his day and trying the best that he can, he's a good-willed husband, doing his best, as Dr. Egerich would say, then really find ways to recognize his achievement and not to improve him or nag at him. And so if you can get that down from the wife's perspective, then that will help to improve the relationship as well. A few book recommendations that really helped us at the beginning of our marriage was Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, Dr. John Gray. It's an excellent one.
Yeah, it's a good one.
And that'll also help you with the male-female brain differences too. I think he's the one that talks about the spaghetti brain and the waffle brain. And then also Love and Respect by Dr. Emerson Egerich. It's an excellent one.
Absolutely. So do your reading, and thank you for watching.